Last week I was flying back from Vancouver, and what do you do on a 10-hour journey? Well, you do have to watch some of the films, don't you? And one of the films that they were showing was Casino Royale. Well, I've seen it once, but you don't have a lot of choice when you're killing time. You know, and one of the phrases which will always be associated with James Bond is shaken, not stirred. That's how he liked his martinis, shaken but not stirred. What we find in Psalm 125 are people who are not shaken but stirred. So if you want a title for this sermon, I know that Michael Peach will be wanting a title for the sermon. So here it is, Michael. Not shaken but stirred. And if you want a catchphrase for the Christian life, then try it. Not shaken but stirred. Stirred to worship. Stirred to pray. Stirred to walk the journey of faith, but not shaken. Towards the end of Casino Royale, James Bond, having been let down and betrayed, is asked by M, his boss, "You don't trust anyone, do you?" He replies, "No." And M responds, "Then you've learned your lesson." See, that was what, in the film, in the book, MI6 wanted. An agent who would trust no one. But, you know, it's the tragedy of our age that this is a lesson learnt by so many. So many who've learnt this lesson that they do not trust anyone. And actually, you can't blame them, can you? You only have to look at the headlines during this past few weeks. You know, would you trust a bank if your money was with Northern Rock? Or if you've got an overdraft and you find that, you know, you've been charged more than 3 or 4 times in one day for overdrawing? Would you trust the government if you get child benefit and all your information is being spread gaily across the world? It's amazing. You see, the headlines in the Times yesterday was all about our fears about the Chinese trying to infiltrate our computers or the computers of the major companies to get information. They don't need to do that. The government will give it to them, you know. Would you trust the Labour Party if you wanted to give them a donation or when they're topping up their funds? Actually, would you trust any party in that position? Would you trust your colleague or the children if you call a teddy bear Mohammed in the Sudan? You can understand why, people find it difficult to trust. Many people have lost the ability to trust because they've been hurt by a loved one, an unfaithful partner, or damaged by an uncaring parent. You know, when you cannot trust, your world becomes frightening, unstable, insecure. It's a fearful place. But here in Psalm 125, we have discovered a people who can trust, because they've found one in whom they can trust, one who gives them stability, one who protects. We meet a people not shaken. See that in verse 1. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken, but endures forever. I want you to come with me in your imaginations. I want you to go back 2,500, 3,000 years and join that crowd of pilgrims going up that road to Zion. I want you to look around you and see who's there. There's old people and young people. There's families together. There's poor people and wealthy people. There's all sorts of people traveling up to worship. They all have that one desire in mind. They've all come together on this route to worship God. As you walk with them and you reach the top of a hill, suddenly there displayed before you is Jerusalem and Mount Zion. You're looking down from the hills around upon Mount Zion. And as you look at it, you see how firm it is, how solid, how rooted it is in the earth. This is a mountain that's not going to move away. You know, some of the old people with you have been so many times on this journey, and the mountain has always been there for them. And you know that it will be there for the children and the children's children afterwards. It's a solid thing. It cannot be moved. Now join with the crowd as they sing, "Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken, but abides forever." People who trust in the living God are unshakable, like Mount Zion, because he is unshakable. He is reliable. He's consistent. He will never fail. So, what does it mean to trust in the Lord? Well, it means to be dependent on his care, to rely totally upon him. It means to enter into a relationship with him, because you cannot trust somebody that you do not have a relationship with. So it means getting to know him. It means that you are totally reliant upon his forgiveness to deal with your sin. You're totally trusting in his protection to see you through the difficulties and the traumas of this difficult life that we live. It means that you are fully committing yourself to his purposes for your life. That's what it means to trust. You see, we've already seen at the table, Jesus climbed the mountain for you and for me. He hung upon the cross for you, where he suffered for your sin and died in your place. When you commit yourself to him, then you will be like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken, but endures forever. Or to put it in another way, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Do you see the connection? Shall not be shaken. Shall not perish. Endurable. Will have everlasting life. That's what comes trusting in the Lord Jesus Christ. But let's continue our walk with the pilgrims heading for Zion. As you head towards the city, look around you. Look around at the hills and mountains that circle the city, providing a natural protection. You see, Jerusalem is set in a saucer of hills. And that's what made it, in the psalmist's time, one of the safest cities to live in, because it had this natural protection around you. But better than a city wall, better than a military fortification, better is the presence of the living God, the God of peace. That's what keeps Zion sure. Those who trust in God are unshakable and enduring, because God surrounds his people and God provides care now and forevermore. He's promised to protect us, care for us, and provide for us. Now, some of you may well be thinking, that's all very well, but it does not feel like that in my experience. I actually don't feel protected at the moment. I don't feel cared for. I seem to be in a constant battle. One thing we find in the Psalms is that the psalmists are always realists. They always face reality and truth. The psalmist lived in the real world. So now we find that the people we've been walking with are also people who are in a conflict situation, experiencing affliction, They are a people in conflict. The scepter of the wicked will not remain over the land allotted to the righteous, for then the righteous might use their hands to do evil. What we find here is that actually wickedness is ruling over the righteous. We don't know the source of this wickedness, whether it came from within the ranks of the people of God or whether it was imposed from outside. But the term the scepter means that wickedness was in control. The scepter is what the ruler holds on to. Down through the ages, the people of God, the people who trusted in the Lord, have found themselves in times and situations where they've been under the rod of the wicked. If you look at Iran, or Sudan, or Burma, or China, you will find Christians who are in prison or suffering under the rod of wickedness. You yourself may be experiencing pain or affliction or suffering at this time and be thinking, where is God? Why does he not rescue me? You may be feeling that wickedness is reigning in your home. And you worry about going back home. Or in your workplace, you may feel that it's wickedness that rules there and there is no security and no peace for you there. Or maybe in your classroom, you may feel that wickedness is there in the shape of some bully or bullying teacher or whatever. Or maybe you're the teacher and you're feeling the wickedness there from the bullying children. Wondering, how long can I go on? How long can I cope with this? The psalmist here knows about sickness, and he knows about death, and he knows about despair, and he knows about persecution. The psalmist is familiar with rape and pillage, of military invasion, famine and earthquake and natural disaster. You see, Psalm 125 was written by somebody who couldn't go to the hospital and have an anesthetic, who didn't have paracetamol in his cupboard, didn't know what it was to have antibiotics. The psalmist knew certainly what pain was and suffering was as part of daily life. But it did not destroy his confidence. And why? Because of verse 3. The scepter of the wicked will not remain over the land allotted to the righteous, for then the righteous might use their hands to do evil. You see, what this psalm is telling us, what this verse is saying, is that there is a limit to the power of wickedness. It will not remain. God never allows danger or oppression to be too much for us. Evil is always temporary. You see what he says here. The scepter of the wicked will not remain over the land allotted to the righteous, for then the righteous might use their hands to do evil. So what he's saying, look, evil will never be able to get to that situation that it causes the righteous people, the people who are trusted in the Lord, to do evil. Paul puts it in a different way. He says in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13, no temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide you a way out so that you can stand up under it. So you see the link again. Here the psalmist was recognizing that the people were under the rule of the wicked, but he could see that wickedness would not remain in control. It was limited by the power of God, and God protects his people from falling. That's why they are unshakable. Because these people who trusted in the Lord knew the extent of his protective care and the limit of the power of wickedness, they could pray with confidence. We have here a people who are stirred to prayer. Do good, O Lord, to those who are good, to those who are upright in heart. Do good, O Lord, to those who are good, to to those who are upright in heart. The people on our journey, as we've walked along, have reached the stage when they're looking around and they're saying, yes, Lord, you bring stability, you bring security. But we live in a world where there is pain, there is suffering, where wickedness does rule. So what can we do but pray? And they are stirred to prayer. And that's what this psalm should do for us. It should stir us to prayer. When we have assurance about God's care and are aware of the limitations of evil, then we have confidence to pray. And in verse 4, we have a prayer of intercession for fellow believers, people who are good. Good because God has dealt with their sin. Not good because it doesn't say, pray for the perfect. He prays for the good. Those whose hearts have been made pure by the blood of Christ. Those who are upright in heart, fixed on him, trusting in him. There are fellow believers around the world today who are suffering under the scepter of the wicked. Have you been stirred to pray for them recently? That the Lord would do them good. Now, it may be that some of you are saying, okay, that's all well and good. You present a situation where, God is stable, God is secure, and he brings stability and security to us. You present a situation where there is wickedness, but it's limited. Why does God allow these things to happen? Why does God let these things happen to me personally? Why does God let a couple in Iran be whipped for having become Christians? Why does he do those things? Why does God let somebody be thrown into prison for naming the name of Jesus Christ? Why does he allow these things? Why does he allow this pain in my life? I want to give you a quote from Malcolm Muggeridge, actually. It's a quote that Eugene Peterson uses in one of his books. And Malcolm Muggeridge says, contrary to what might be expected, I look back on experiences that at the time seemed especially desolating and painful with particular satisfaction. Indeed, I can say with complete truthfulness that everything I have learned in my 75 years in this world, everything that has truly enhanced and enlightened my existence, has been through affliction and not through happiness, whether pursued or attained. In other words, if it were possible to eliminate affliction from our earthly existence by means of some drug or other medical mumbo-jumbo, the result would not to be make life more delectable, but to make it too banal and trivial to be endurable. This is, of course, what the cross signifies, and it is the cross more than anything else that has called me inexorably to Christ. Did you get the message there? That it's in the path of affliction, in the path of pain, in having to cope with wickedness in power, that we grow spiritually, that we develop in our Christian life. Because you see, it throws us onto the God who's so totally dependable and trustworthy. It throws us to turn to him and put our trust in him, to daily come to him because of the problems that we are facing. And it's as we come into that relationship with God, as we turn to him, so we grow in our own spiritual life. Certainly, that has been my experience over the 49 years of my Christian experience. The times when life has been going well and easy have probably been the times when my spiritual life has sunk to its lowest. The times of affliction and difficulty and problems have been the times when I have turned to the Lord and trusted in him and discovered that not only is he unshakable, but he makes me unshakable. And discovered that in his time, in his way, he shows his protection. And so I can pray with confidence for those I know and those I hear of who are suffering, because I know there is a God who puts a limit to evil. He puts a limit to pain. He puts a limit to suffering. Did you notice the contrast? In verse 1 and verse 2, we have the mountain which cannot be shaken but endures forever. And the Lord surrounds his people in verse 2, both now and forevermore. There's eternity with God. And then you look at verse 3. The scepter of the wicked will not remain. There's nothing lasting about sin. There is nothing lasting about suffering. There's nothing lasting about wickedness. There's a deadline that God gives. God is everlasting. Wickedness is not. That's why we can be stirred to pray with confidence. But while we're thinking of contrasts, we see that these are people who had to choose. These are people who had to choose. Notice in verse 5, but those who turn to crooked ways, the Lord will banish with the evildoers. You notice the contrast between verse 1 and verse 5. Those who trust in the Lord, those who turn to crooked ways. There's a warning in this psalm. The way of God is not an easy route. There are many challenges and many trials on the way. It's not easy to be a Christian. There's always the temptation to turn off the route and find the easy way. It may be not such a straight way, it may be a bit more crooked way, but it's easier. But those who turn to crooked ways, the Lord will banish with the evildoers. You, at this moment, may be finding the Christian life is difficult. You may even be tempted to give up. You may be saying, look, I come each Sunday and I don't feel fed. I don't feel I'm growing. I feel bowed down with pressure and strain. What's the point? What's the point? Let's join the crowd going to Tesco's or Castle Point. Perhaps there's more point at Castle Point. Maybe what you're thinking. The temptation is there. But let me assure you, those who trust in the Lord will be unshakable because they are always cared for and protected by God and never allowed to suffer more temptations than they can bear. Hold on to that precious thought. Whatever trial and difficulty you're going through at the moment, God will not allow it to go beyond what you can bear. Indeed, what he will do, when you trust him, he will make you even more able to bear it. He will make you unshakable. Because what God is looking for is people that will declare to the world around that whatever is thrown at them, whatever difficulties arise, they have a God who is so trustworthy, so glorious, so wonderful, that they'll take anything to serve him and to live for him. That they'll be stirred to walk that way in the strength and the power of the living God. But those who turn away, they have no security, no protection, no future. So there's the warning. May the Lord bless us as we seek to be among those who trust in the Lord and are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken, but endures forever. And when we do that, our experience will be, peace be upon Israel. May the Lord bless us.